stack strategy is quite possibly one of the most hated things in Magic the Gathering. But if stack strategy was entirely hated, it would cease to exist. So it's kind of amazing to think of how it has persisted, but it also raises another question of, why is stack strategy good for Magic? Now, chances are you know what stack strategy is because you clicked on the video. However, for those of you that don't know, stacks is a playstyle that revolves around limiting what your opponents can do, like casting spells or breathing. And these limiting effects can come in all shapes and sizes, such as sacrificing, discard, counterspells, interaction, or taxes. Sounds fun, right? Of course not. But this playstyle does have one obvious benefit. Now, I mentioned in this video a way that you can deal with gatekeepers and people that are either like annoying or suck the fun from your games. However, sometimes peaceful solutions go either unnoticed or unappreciated. So here's a gentle suggestion. Build a deck that is as mean as possible and reserve it for those players. Chances are you don't want to play with them anyway, and if you're stuck in the game, you might as well get some sort of benefit out of it, which brings us to the other two benefits of stack strategy. Looking back on my Magic the Gathering career, I can almost tie a direct correlation between when I started utilizing advanced game mechanics and whenever I built my Turgid deck. And I feel like that's largely in part due to the fact that in a Stax deck, you're trying to exploit specific game mechanics. And that does mean that you have to factor in specific elements of the game, such as sequencing, turn order, the stack, stuff like that. Whereas strategies such as like tribal decks are a little bit more make big thing go punch. Or if you're playing something like Aristocrats, you're developing your own board state, and while you still might have some interaction, it's not as overt as it is in a Stax deck because interaction is the whole game plan. Now that brings us to the third benefit, which is that a Stax deck will quite explicitly show you the weaknesses of your deck. Whether it's either taxes or a deteriorating board state, you should at least have some sort of interaction or a way that you can deal with pesky effects. So let's use an example that I ran into. Let's say you're playing against a Grand Arbiter tax deck and you're playing Hydras. Now, if you don't put any sort of creature removal in that Hydra tribal deck, that tax deck is going to steamroll all over you just because you're not going to be able to cast anything. And part of the reason I do have this appreciation for stack strategy is just because ultimately, if you boil it down, it's a more high-level version of creative problem solving. Much like how Turgid has a weakness against tokens, every single deck has its weaknesses, and it's your job as a player to try and find and exploit those weaknesses. Now, the only downside and the reason why Stax is so hated is because it utilizes the metagame. Now, I completely understand if you still hate stack strategy, don't worry, you're in the majority. But again, even though playing against this Stax deck can be incredibly frustrating, if you kind of reframe it as what weaknesses does this show in my deck, even the most annoying Stax game can still have a benefit. But if you've gotten this far, don't forget to tap that subscribe button. Wow, that felt nerdy to say. And if this video inspired you to take on the Stax playstyle, because I genuinely do recommend having at least one Stax deck, make sure to check out this video, which is my personal Turgid Stax deck, or you can check out this video, which is a handful of Stax-like adjacent combos that you can throw in pretty much any deck, just in case if you need to crush someone's soul.